Good morning, Year 4. Happy Monday and welcome to our English learning for this week. We've got a really exciting piece of learning to do this week that I'm very, very excited to do with you. This is Miss Nolan. And to start with, I'd like you to watch a little video clip to get your imagination and your mind racing. And that video clip is linked on the website. So I want you to click on the weather introduction video and watch the first 23 seconds. So pause this video and do that now. Okay, so hopefully watching that video has made you start thinking about different types of weather and start kind of getting those creative juices flowing in your mind and thinking lots about, I wonder what I'd like to know about weather, what interests me about weather, and how I can use this, how we're going to use this week in our English. So we're going to be creating our own imaginary weather. So it's not going to be a real weather. It's going to be based on a real weather type, but using our imagination. And we're going to be writing a non-chronological report about that weather. So let me give you a little run through of the week first so that you know what's coming up. So on Monday, which is today, we're going to be looking at some examples of weather reports, and we're going to start to create a bank of language for our reports. So we'll have lots of, we're going to magpie lots of language out of those reports and steal it for our own. On Tuesday, we're going to be engaging our imagination. So that's the day we'll be making up our own wacky weather and planning our report. On Wednesday, we're going to learn how to use verbs and adverbs and how to vary where we choose to place them in sentences. That's going to be a really important part of our report at the end of the week. So that's a very important skill. On Thursday, we're going to be writing our report, and on Friday, we're going to be editing and publishing our report. So today, first thing we're going to do is think about the structure, vocabulary, and grammar features of a non-chronological report. And if you're not sure what that means yet, don't worry, we're about to cover it. So the pictures here are to help us. That cooking pot pointing to features is just there to help remind us that the features of a written piece just means the ingredients. What is it that this kind of writing has got in it that other kinds of writing don't have? What makes it a non-chronological report? And we're going to look at the layout and the words. There's two different things there that we need to focus on when we're thinking about what are those features. So first, we're going to think about the layout features of a report like this. And we're not going to spend very long on this because I know that in Year 4 you're very, very familiar with all of the layout features of this kind of report, but let's remind ourselves. So now I want you to download the example reports from the Year 4 home learning webpage, and I'd like you to read the first one, tornadoes. And I want you to answer these questions. So they are, how does this writing organise the information? Who is its audience? And what is its purpose? So pause the video now and do that. Okay, so I think you probably noticed that it's got a very large bold word at the top, which we either call a title or a heading, and that tells us what it's all about, tornadoes. Underneath the heading, what did you spot? It's an introduction, isn't it? And hopefully you've maybe had a little think about the purpose of an introduction, and that is to hook the reader in, to give them a summary of what they're about to read. This report has 2 paragraphs below the introduction, and this report has chosen to use subheadings that are questions. So it's got, how does a tornado form? And are tornadoes dangerous? These are the 2 subheadings or subtitles. And you can see the paragraphs underneath that match the subheading. We've also got a map, a diagram, but that could be a picture. But this is a scientific report, so maps, diagrams, they're going to be a little bit more, we're going to go for the scientific side of those rather than a descriptive picture that we colour in a kind of an arty way. This is going to be a scientific picture, which we call a diagram. So you can see that this one has got a tornado risk map to show the areas in the United States that are particularly at risk for tornadoes. Then we think about, who is its audience? Well, its audience is anyone who wants to know about tornadoes. If you wanted to find out some information about tornadoes, you could read this and become informed. And what is its purpose? Well, it's to give information about tornadoes. It's written, it's not too complicated, so it could be for children, but it's not for very young children, is it? It's probably for older children, maybe teenagers, rather than grown-ups. So we're looking at maybe year 4, 5, 6, or lower secondary school. Those are the people who might be reading this to find out about tornadoes. Now we're going to start looking in more depth at the word features, and this is the important bit really for us to really focus on because it's a little bit more detailed. So what are the language features of a non-chronological report, and which types of words does the author use to be successful? So we've got some example non-chronological reports for you to download, and you can download those from the website. And I want you to now download them and read them. If you can print them out, it's going to really help you later, because it would be great if you could scribble all over them, highlight them, notice things, steal things. But if you can't do that, you can just look at them on the computer screen. That's fine. On the next slide, we're going to go on to look at 4 different language features that we're going to include in our report. But before we do that, I just want you again to pause this slide and look at the examples and see if you can guess what some of those word level features are. And by that, we're talking about what kinds of words are in it. Has it got lots of descriptive language? Has it got lots of informative language? Can you notice any nouns, adjective, verbs, adverbs, any of those word types that we've talked about in school? Are there any that are really standing out at you and making you think, hang on, this is going to be really, really important for this type of writing, the type of writing that, as we've just said, has a purpose of informing the reader all about something they want to know about. So pause this video, look at those examples and do that now. Okay, so here are the 4 things that I wanted you to notice. And these are the 4 things that we're going to be learning about all week and making sure we include in our report. So they are adverbs, conjunctions, scientific vocabulary, and present tense verbs. So have a look. Again, if you didn't spot all these, don't worry. It was just it isn't a test. You don't need to have got them all. It was just to get your imagination going. So have a look again now and see if you can say, oh, maybe you didn't see the conjunctions in there before. Maybe you can find a couple of conjunctions now. Have another little look. Scientific vocabulary, for this piece of writing, it just means words about weather. Words that you wouldn't really use in any normal conversation about something different. Words that you would pretty much only use in a piece of writing about weather. So they're kind of informative words. I'll give you some examples of those later. The other thing you might have spotted is that all of these language features can be used to create something that we're really, really familiar with in Year 4, which is, and I'm sure loads of you spotted this, it's a fronted adverbial. So we can make a fronted adverbial using conjunctions, adverbs and verbs. So even though I haven't mentioned fronted adverbials here on our success criteria, we're definitely going to be using them. And we'll talk a bit more about that later in the week when we think about where we're going to put some of these language features in our sentences. So that will come up a little bit later. So if you spotted fronted adverbials, well done, you were exactly right. So the second part of our task today, after we've had a look through those examples and started thinking about the language we're going to use, is we're going to focus on scientific language, and we're going to make our own scientific language dictionary. So you can see here is a list of weather scientific language. These are words that we might use when we're writing our report. And I want you to choose a word that you want to magpie from this list. Remember, magpie means to kind of steal in a good way. It's a bit like a magpie who flies around taking sparkly things. and putting them in its nest. We're going to choose the sparkliest words, the ones we think, oh, that's going to make my writing really excellent. And we're going to take them, we're going to magpie them to use ourselves. So I want you to choose one of these words that you think, yep, I'm interested in that word. Maybe you want to challenge yourself by choosing one whose meaning you don't know yet. I want you to look it up in a dictionary. And if you don't have a dictionary at home, you can use a website called Wordsmith, which I'm going to put a link to on the Year 4 page. And this one, I like this dictionary because you can choose between beginner, intermediate or advanced level for each word you look up, and it will give you an easy, middle or hard explanation for that word, a definition. So it makes it really easy to choose the right level for you to read that description of the definition. So once you've picked your word, looked it up in a dictionary to see what it means, I want you to write it on a card, and I want you to copy out the definition from the dictionary and include a picture as well. And you can do that for as many of these words as you've got time for. And we're going to start to make our own scientific language dictionary that we're going to be able to use to help us later on in our task. You could also, if you fancied it, you could take some of the words from the example sheets. If you see a word on the example sheet that isn't here, but it's a sort of scientific word that relates to weather that you think is a really great, powerful, interesting word, use that one instead. You don't have to stick to this list. It's just a suggestion. So by the end of today, we're going to have some really rich language all about weather, and we're going to have started to think a little bit about what kind of the kind of ways we're going to use language to get our point across in our piece of writing later in the week. All right, it's been lovely to see you today, Year 4. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again tomorrow.